Everyone, my name is Hannah Mendelis, and I'm the president of the Shiva University Accounting Society, and I'm a senior. So before we begin tonight's event, I want to say thank you so much to tonight's panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to participate in the panel. We really appreciate the time you are giving us. Shout out to Julie Feder, one of our panelists, who's taking the time out of her day, to speak with us. She literally just got off the plane from Wyoming, so thank you as well. So I also want to thank Barbara Lerman King and Sharon Miller-Reyes from the Shevet Glaubach Career Center. Barbara and Sharon have gone above and beyond in planning the event. So I just want to take a minute to discuss the goals of tonight's panel. So some of you are just beginning your college journey. You're wondering if you should major in accounting, looking for internships in accounting or in other business areas. And some of you are going to graduate shortly with jobs lined up. And we want to show you the value of what you're doing. Many people are focused on the short term, just finding the right internship and that job offer right now, but you don't know what's out there, what your job options are. By majoring in accounting and working even at just a few years in the industry, the possibilities that you have are endless, and you can jumpstart your career in other professional areas. There's this big misconception that majoring in accounting means devoting the rest of your life to public accounting and endless audit or tax busy seasons, but many of you are wrong. Each of our panelists majored in accounting, did their time in public accounting, and none of them work in a Big Four or mid-sized accounting firm anymore. These accomplished professionals transitioned from public accounting into the fields of law, real estate, biotech, hedge funds, and then from credit ratings and now into leveraged finance. By listening to what each panelist has to say, you are already paving the next steps in your future, understanding what's out there, who to network with, the right questions to ask, and how to ultimately get there. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to Ari Gutman, our moderator.
Hi guys, so before I say anything about myself, I would just like to express my gratitude to each and every one of our panelists for coming out tonight to speak with us, and I really appreciate it, and everyone from Yeshiva University does as well. Just to give a small introduction about myself, I am a accounting student graduating in January of 25, and I'm working in RSM in their M&A transaction advisory group in summer 24 as an intern. And now we'll start with the fun and we'll get into our first question. And I think I'll just pick on just different panelists to start off each rounds of questions. So I guess I'm going to go with Gilad for the first question. And the question is, can you give us a brief bio about yourself, your current role, and a snapshot of your day-to-day, and what was your first role in accounting?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for hosting this event. This is really great. So nice to meet everybody. My name is Gilad Kopelman. I, like you, majored in accounting at YU, started out my career as an auditor at Deloitte & Touche, spent just about 2 years there. And from there, I kind of realized I wanted to be more, I wanted to get into finance, happy to kind of get into what led me to do that. But from there, I moved on to a small kind of a fund of funds role and a firm called IQG. From there, I was basically doing hedge fund manager due diligence. I learned about credit, learned about fixed income, and found that it very much spoke to me. So from there, I moved over to S&P, spent 4 years there, really loved it. I think it's a place a lot of you should consider if they're hiring. Spent 4 years there covering industrials, packaging, and waste. Was a lead analyst. And then after that, I moved over to the seat that I'm currently in within UBS leverage finance. Specifically within leverage finance, and it's kind of answering the day-to-day, the leverage finance practice has what's called like leverage lending group, which is essentially means that after the bank does let's say an LBO, leverage buyout, or something like that, it takes on exposure in the form of a loan, usually revolving line of credit or something like that. And so basically my group monitors that as well. We also work on the deals as they come in into the investment bank. So hope that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to go next?
I'll go next. First of all, thanks, Hannah, for that shout out. It was a long day. So I'm Julie Fetter. I am a CFO at a clinical stage biotech company called Aura Biosciences. I started my journey in accounting at YU at Cy Sims many years ago. I was also an accounting major. I started out at Deloitte and I was there for many more years than probably anyone on this call, for 16 years. But I didn't stay in audit the whole time. I was in audit for 6 or 7 years and moved on to enterprise risk services, Deloitte Consulting, and mergers and acquisitions. But I found myself moving and continuing to move towards healthcare, and that's how I made the jump into biotech.
Great. Joshua, do you want to go next?
Sure. Again, thank you so much for having me and for hosting this event. I also am a graduate of Yeshiva University, and right out of school, I went to a firm called Richard Eisner, which was a medium-sized accounting firm. I think now I think Eisner Amper is a legacy firm, doing both audit and tax. I was in their audit department, but because it was a small firm, I did some tax. And then after about a year there, I then went to the Ernst & Young tax department for a year, specializing in hedge fund compliance. And then after a year there, I went to Pricewaterhouse. By then it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I went into their hedge fund tax practice for a little bit over 2 years. Great experience. And then I had the opportunity to become the first tax director at Elliott Management, which is one of the world's largest hedge funds. Actually, it's the hedge fund with the longest continuous management. It's been around since 1977, founded by Paul Singer, who's an extremely successful hedge fund manager. And about 4 years ago, I transitioned from being Elliott's tax director to becoming Singer's chief financial officer in his family office. Sure, that's a common term these days, is the concept of a family office, which basically means usually means a high net worth individual has financial, accounting, sometimes even an investment staff behind them, basically running their life. And I've been doing that for 4 years, and it's been great. I just want to comment on something that Hannah, that you said, and I think some of my colleagues would agree, that I really enjoyed your phrase when you referred to it. We all did our time in public accounting. It definitely felt like doing time when we all, and I'm sure everyone else would agree, but it's great experience. Public accounting is a very valuable experience, and no matter where you end up.
Great. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm also a graduate of Yeshiva University from the Cy Sims School of Business. After I left, after I graduated, I went to Ernst & Young. I was there for 3 years. I started off in the audit department, and I started off in the real estate group. At the time, they had just purchased a mid-size accounting firm, I guess, real estate accounting firm called Kenneth Leventhal. So initially we referred to as EYKL. It was really a great mix of being in a big firm and being in a small firm. We had that real close-knit vibe, but being with the backing of the large firm. The advantage of going to a large firm is you get all of this training and all of this real, I guess, institutional experience, which then just makes you appreciate the non-institutional experience that you get afterwards. I actually ended up on a job for Goldman Sachs for 2.5 years. And when that job came to an end, I decided to leave and continue in real estate. And I went to a company called Stellar Management. I was there for 11 years. I was a controller. I had the opportunity to work in commercial and residential, office space, everything. So that was really nice. I left there. I went to Madison Realty Capital for 2 years. Sorry, that's a really annoying doorbell. And then I went to Macklowe Properties for 7 years. My boss was Harry Macklowe, who is just a real presence, I guess you could say. I learned a lot from him as well. And then a year ago, I switched to a company called Barron Property Group, where I'm the CFO.
Amazing. And last but not least, Joel.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Joel Strauss. I am a 1985 graduate of YU. Sims did not exist when I was in YU. I was an accounting major. And my first job out of YU as an accountant was at Coopers & Lybrand, which is now known as PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I worked for a few years in audit in their, what they called then, the Emerging Business Services Group, which today we would call startups, which was really great experience. I took and passed the CPA exam while I was there, and then decided to go to law school. I am presently a partner at a law firm headquartered here in Manhattan called Kaplan, Fox and Kilsheimer, where I've been for the last 32 years since graduating from Cardozo in 1992. And I specialize in securities fraud. And my accounting background is particularly helpful because securities fraud is very often based on companies cooking their books. So my accounting experience, and I maintain my CPA license, which is important, is very helpful. And hopefully we'll have a chance later to talk about combining accounting with law. And then in addition to several things, professionally, I've been sitting on as a standing member of the New York State Bar's Committee on Legal Education for about the last 9 years, where I meet once a month with the deans of the 15 New York law schools, and we talk about issues pertinent to legal education and the bar exam. I'm also an adjunct professor at Stern and have been for about the last 9 years, promoting my class Monday nights from 6 to 8:30 on the U.S. Legal system. And I sit on several committees and councils at YU, and happy to be here.
Great. So let's move on to the next question. And let's start with Joshua. And the question is, what encouraged you to switch to the career that you are in today? And was there anything specific that stood out to you about the position that you're currently in?
So I, as I mentioned before, I was the tax director of Elliott Management, and I was the tax director for almost 18 years, and doing both the work for the investment firm as well as some work for the firm's principal as well. And it was determined that it was time for the firm's principal life and all his financial life to be separated from the business. Both, it was just healthy for the company as well as the compliance and regulatory. For compliance and regulatory reasons, they wanted that. So in this opportunity so there was going to be this new opportunity to run the family office for Paul Singer, and I took that opportunity. I guess after 18 years of doing tax work, although it's exciting and there's always new things, I was looking for something new, and I think that becoming the CFO of a family office gave me the opportunity to go from being less of a specialist in tax and investment tax, and a little bit more of a generalist, sort of running all aspects of the high net worth individual's personal life. So it was sort of a new opportunity. It was a new role that was sort of created, and it was definitely a challenge trying to figure out how to sort of say you're interested in a new role without saying it's time to come up with something new. But it was really a great opportunity, and I've been doing that for 4 years, and it's been great.
I hear that. It sounds really good. Jennifer, would you like to go next?
Sure. Okay. So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure. No
which one?
worries. So what encouraged you to switch to the career
Oh,
that you're
okay.
in today? And was there anything specific that stood out to you about that option that you're currently in?
Okay, so one thing was that when I started going into public accounting, my father-in-law was a CPA, and he would always say to me, go into private. That's my advice to you, go into private. So I kind of had that ingrained in me that going into a big 5 accounting firm, now it's big 4, that it was going to be just a step to the next part of my career. I did not actually intend to continue on with audit or with tax for that matter. So that was always kind of my plan. I kind of waited it out to see as long as it was. Again, my engagement ended at a certain point, and then at that exact moment, I happened to have had an opportunity to, interview at this real estate firm as a favor for a friend. So I kind of fell into it, but it really was what I wanted to do ultimately anyway. I felt personally that being in a smaller thing and not being so nuanced, I had the opportunity to just kind of work on everything. I did a little bit of wealth management for a boss of mine. I worked with estates and trusts and personal accounting, putting together his net worth, dealing with all sorts of different aspects, both within real estate and with accounting. So I kind of am able to do just more than something very nuanced, which I enjoy.
Okay, amazing. Julie, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I actually am a little bit different because I went to Deloitte thinking that that was going to be my career. I thought I wanted to be, a partner in a public accounting firm. I hit a lot of industries when I was there. I did real estate for many years. I did World Wrestling Entertainment for many years. I moved over to healthcare and biotech when I moved to Boston, but for me, I had the opportunity to experience a lot of things, both on the accounting side as well as on the consulting side. And I knew that as you move up the ladder, I actually loved my time at Deloitte. So I didn't actually think it was, prison and torture. I think I actually loved my time there. But I think you could really, really enjoy it if you're working with the right people and you're doing an industry that you enjoy. So I would encourage everyone to do that. But when I moved to Boston, it was really for me just a change of address because it was all the Northeast, and they put me at a biotech company. There was a need for it. It was the very first year of Sarbanes-Oxley, and they were just deploying people wherever they could. And listen, I got the bug that I needed to save lives. I worked for an incredible company called Genzyme. Their founder, Henry Tamir, who was he ran the company like we were 15 people, even though we were 11,000, and made every single person there believe that they were valuable and they were helping to save lives. And for me, I got the bug that I wanted to combine both science and accounting. And right now I've worked in a number of biotech companies, and I worked at an incredible nonprofit where I was the CFO there as well, and traveled to Africa and Asia and brought healthcare to people who need it the most. But right now I'm working at a biotech company where I truly believe that we're starting our pivotal trial now, and I believe we're going to be curing cancer. So there's no better way to get up every morning and be inspired to go to work every single day. And it doesn't matter if I'm working with my team in accounting or my financial planning and analysis team or my legal team or my investor relations or my HR or my IT. As a CFO, I'm able to really be responsible for a lot of the different areas in the company, all the while knowing that I'm doing really what I love, but I'm doing it all in the spirit of saving lives. So that's a little bit of my transition, and don't be afraid to go to what is now the Big Four, even though it was the Big Eight when I was there. It's actually a great time.
Amazing, and that's very inspiring to hear that. So let's have Joel go next, and I'm assuming the answers are going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, it will, because my career track was a little different. So I was doing audit mostly with startups at Coopers & Lybrand, which then was one of the Big Eight firms. And after a few years, although I realized I was learning a lot and I liked working there, I worked on a lot of interesting things. I knew and realized that I didn't want to be an accountant for the rest of my life, and start seriously thinking about law school, which was always in the back of my mind. And then I decided I actually took a year off from Coopers & Lybrand and worked on some of my own business dealings, and I was doing audit work for some small accounting firms. And I took the LSAT, and just to keep all my options open. And by the end of that year, I decided to go to law school, and I ended up going to Cardozo, which I was very happy that I did. Then I wasn't sure how I was going to utilize my CPA accounting experience as a lawyer. Most people just assume, oh, you're going to do tax. And that's really not the case. And in my second year of law school, I was taking a corporations course with a professor who was an expert in securities fraud and securities litigation. And when he found out that I was a CPA, he recruited me to make sure that I was going to teach and grade the mandatory one credit course in accounting for lawyers that everyone taking corporations had to take. And in exchange, he let me help him edit a book that he was writing on fiduciary responsibilities. And it opened my eyes to the whole world of securities litigation and securities fraud, and made me realize how my accounting background would be helpful for that. Not just tax, because honestly, I really did not like tax. I actually applied to the firm that I've been at now for over about 32 years. And they said to me, oh my gosh, we really want you, because my firm was well known for securities litigation. Like, it's incredible that, you know, we could have you working at our firm, because there are like very few CPAs. Nobody thinks of a CPA as a trial lawyer. Everyone thinks of them as somebody with the hat on, crunching numbers and doing tax. You don't think of a CPA as a trial lawyer. And they recruited me in my second year of law school. And there may be a handful of CPAs in what we call the whole plaintiffs bar in the country. And I'm glad that I made that transition. And I guess in one of the breakout groups later, we're going to talk about how to combine accounting and law. And there are numerous ways, not just in tax and trust and estates, but also in litigation. But as my students know, because I make the pitch in my class, for those who are accounting majors, do your utmost to try and get that CPA, because, and I'll talk about this more later, because whether you're planning to go to graduate school, whether it's law school or anything else, in life, having that CPA will definitely be helpful. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But of particular relevance is in today's Wall Street Journal, for those who read it. Well, you may have seen other articles in the last few weeks about the shortage of CPAs in the United States. There, according to many reports in the last couple of years, more than 300,000 CPAs have left the accounting profession, or at least the public accounting profession, and it's caused a huge problem in public accounting. And in today's Wall Street Journal, there was an article entitled "Accountant Salaries Are Rising, but it may not add up to more accountants." And it talks about how there's such a demand now for CPAs that many of the firms are jacking up their salaries to levels that were unheard of, because there just are not enough CPAs to fill the demand. So, and that's right out of today's Wall Street Journal. So for those of you who are accounting majors, keep that in mind. They're giving out big signing. Some of the big firms are giving out, they're so desperate, they're giving out huge signing bonuses. So.
Amazing, thank you. And Gilad.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess what encouraged me, so maybe taking a step back, I learned about finance a little bit later in my college career. I think it was probably, like kind of towards the end. And I was like, during that time, I knew accounting was going to be a good background for, whatever I was going to end up doing. But, basically decided that, once I got the offer from Deloitte that, I'll take it and, kind of see where it takes me. But I guess kind of during college, and I guess a little bit as I was starting out at Deloitte, I got exposed to what's called fundamental analysis, which basically is this thing where you learn about a company, you learn about an industry, and you dig into the financials as much as you can, and you develop a view about a company and where it's going to go. And if you're on the equity side, the stock, if you think the stock is fairly valued today, if you think it's going to go up, it's going to go down. If you're in credits, fixed income, leveraged loans, which is the area that I'm in, kind of look at things a little differently. So I very much found that spoke to me. I guess particularly, I knew that kind of like for my yeshiva days, I was, I guess maybe for the men here, maybe some women have exposure to this as well. But in yeshiva, there's something called a chabura, where basically not just a shir, but basically where somebody takes a topic, takes a sugya, and prepares a lecture on it essentially. And so they advocate for their viewpoint, and then everybody kind of grills them on it and tries to basically tear apart their thesis. And so I found that is something that I could see myself doing as a career. And I knew that either on the equity side, as I initially went for, or the credit side. That would be something that'd be interesting to me. And so, like I said, so I got an offer with Deloitte, kind of with the eye out that I was going to go towards a role that would let me do that. I was actually aiming towards equity research. And I moved into, I guess, 2 years out of Deloitte. I moved into, like I said, IQG, and then from there into S&P. And again, happy to speak to people. Unfortunately, I can't stay after for the breakout sessions, but happy to speak to anybody, one-on-one. But I really found that those experiences have been really, fulfilling. And I think that definitely every firm has its own nuances and its own kind of the way of doing things. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the direction that I took my career.
Great. So we'll move on to the next question. And we already heard a little bit about this answer from Joel, but let's hear what everyone else has to say. Is it advantageous to take the CPA if you know that you're not going to remain in public accounting long-term? Why yes and why no? And I guess let's start with Julie for that first question.
Sure, it's a great question. And full disclosure, a future SciSims student just walked in and is listening in because he might major in accounting. High five. Woo. Okay, so why should you take this? 100% you should take the CPA exam. Okay, like there's no reason not to. SciSims, I was the second graduating class of SciSims. I think they prepared me incredibly well to take the exam. There's no reason not to. You will all do fine on it. Maybe you'll have to take it more than once, but you'll all do fine on it. I kept mine up for many years until I was working in global health, and I was really just traveling so much that I couldn't keep up with the credits. But I am to this day disappointed that I did not maintain my CPA. I have to say inactive CPA on my resume, which I hate, but listen, it's no different than if you get your MBA and you have 3 letters after your name, or you get your PhD and you have 3 letters after your name. Those are your 3 letters. And it doesn't matter if you're in a public accounting or you're signing audit reports. And I get that after 30 years, it could get boring to do that, but it is a designation. You do get credit for it when you go out and get a job. It does demonstrate that you have that skill and that experience. And at 100%, I'm very supportive, and I encourage all the students that I mentor to please go ahead and take that exam.
Great.
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
I love that you said what you said about how important it is. But even if you're not having those 3 initials next to you, you have no idea how that will help you in your professional life
100%.
for the rest of your lives. And I'll give you an example that you may not even thought about. Let's say you leave public accounting or private accounting and you're working in the startup world, okay? And I do a lot of work with venture capital firms and startups. And if you're pitching to investors, okay, for your startup, and they know that, hey, you're a CPA, it gives you a lot more credibility with them, okay? Because investors invest in people as much as they do in products 100%. And companies. And if they know that you're a CPA, especially if you have some experience, it will help you with those investors. It'll help you in ways that you cannot even fathom or imagine now. So
it's also one of the only degrees, one of the only 3 letters that you can get without going to graduate school, right? I mean, you could get it right out of college, which is really incredible. And Joel, I completely agree with what you said. It's incredibly valuable.
Okay, Joshua, would you like to add some insight?
The only thing I would say is not only is it an absolute super important to become a CPA, I would take the exam right out of college and don't procrastinate.
Great advice. I've heard.
Yes,
that
right. Because a lot of it is textbook, and the closer you are to the textbooks, the better off you do. And in my day, it was, and maybe for some of the older folk, it also forced you to write your exit paper. I don't think SciSims has it now, but when I graduated YU, you had to have an exit paper, but and you didn't graduate without the exit paper, and you couldn't sit for the CPA exam until you graduated. So while all the other all of my friends who graduated in other SciSims majors ended up not graduating in May. They graduated in September or the following January. They procrastinated. It forces you also to finish. But yeah, right away, no questions asked.
I hear that. And Jennifer, would you like to add on this? I'm assuming that you're going to give a similar answer to the rest.
Well, I agree with everything that was said prior to me. I actually don't have my CPA. My life kind of took different twists and turns for different reasons. I sat for all 4 parts, but I didn't do them all I didn't do them all at the same time. So I don't actually have a CPA. Although I do totally agree with everything. Definitely agree with Joshua. Do it as soon as you graduate. And the reality is that people assume that I have my CPA because I was at Ernst & Young, and that is on my resume. But it's definitely a great thing to have. It has not really affected me too much. There have definitely been a few opportunities that have not, necessarily panned out, because although CPA does mean certified public auditor, and you don't necessarily need it to go into private accounting, it is always good to have those extra 3 letters after your name.
Great. Gilad, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, completely agree with everybody said, and Joel. It's funny that you mentioned with your investors. I guess probably since I got my CPA, I probably been on interviews with, I don't know, probably close to like 100 people all in. And I've never been asked an accounting question once, because they see my CPA, the 3 letters after my name, and they know that I know more accounting than they do. I've been like interviewed by like head of equity research like Bank of America, and like people at like very like big funds and places like that. And they've asked me other technical questions, but they won't ask me accounting questions because they're afraid of somebody with the 3 letters after their name. So highly recommended.
Great. And let's move on to the next question. And we'll start with Joel. How long do you think one should stay in public accounting before making the shift to go to private or going to graduate school? How do you know that you're not leaving public accounting too early?
Okay, so this is a question I've answered zillions of times. I would say minimum 2 years. If it's more, in a lot of states, actually, you need a minimum, in addition to passing the CPA exam, in many states, you need to work for at least 1 year, in some states 2 years, in addition to passing the exam. So without question, a minimum of 2 to 3 years. And then, you can move on, whether it's to go to graduate school, to another job or whatever, but less than 2 to 3 years, I think people, think, oh, you really didn't get all that much experience. But yeah, that's, I stand behind that answer.
Great. Gilad, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a different perspective. I think it depends what you're trying to do. I think if you're looking to stay, if you're looking to go private, if you're looking to go down the CFO route, as many here have gone, I think staying for several years makes a lot of sense. And I think you're going to pick up things at an audit engagement that you probably wouldn't pick up, working as, on the private side. That being said, if you're trying to do something like what I did, where you're trying to pivot out of accounting into finance or into something else, the advice that I was given, and this was by multiple people, is that accounting is a very good background, and your time at the Big Four or other major firms will serve you well. But that being said, unfortunately, there is a little bit of like a label, right? Like people like to put things and people into boxes. So if you stick around for longer than you need to, then you will be labeled as an auditor or as a tax person. And if that's what you want to do, then like by all means stay as long as everybody else is here telling you to do. If not, it's something to think about. And I think the earlier you get out, even within like a year and a half, I think the easier it is to kind of move to other positions. Because also, you're also going to be, competing with people that started out in finance out of school. So if people started like investment banking or in equity research out of school, and you're trying to go for the similar roles, you're already like competing with people with like 2-3 years of that experience. So the sooner, in my opinion, the sooner you make that jump, probably the easier it is to get into those seats.
Great. I guess for the sake of time, we'll just hop into a couple personal questions that are directed to.
Well, actually, could I just add to that one? Sorry to.
Yeah, of course.
And Gilad, great points in terms of if one has an interest in transition from accounting to finance, but assuming someone wants to sort of stay in the accounting world, and I think that levels at accounting firms, if you've become a senior associate, if you become a manager, if you become a senior manager, even just those titles have sort of in the accounting world have expectations that if you've become a senior, you've gone to that point. If you've become a manager. So one advice that it worked well in my career, and I've spoken to a number of people, is if you're looking to make a transition out of public accounting, first of all, as Joel mentioned, there's a need for accountants. So, and I've seen it many times where people leave public accounting and then go back. So if I've always felt like if you're looking to look for a new opportunity, the best time to look for a new opportunity is right after a promotion. Because then if you've just made manager, if you come back as a new manager a year or two later because the job opportunity didn't work out, you really haven't lost any of it. I think it's poor advice to leave an accounting firm right before a promotion. You've done those 2 or 3 years leading up to that promotion, and then you leave 6 months before your class is going to be promoted to manager or senior manager. I'm not saying if you have a chance to play shortstop for the New York Yankees, then you take it. But otherwise, levels at accounting firms have significant meaning. So that's just something to think about when going into public accounting, or actually when leaving public accounting.
I really like that answer. So for the sake of time, we'll just hop into the individual questions. And this question is directed for Jennifer. And the question is that when you were at EY, you worked in audit, and do you think that you would have gotten to the spot to where you are if you did tax instead of audit? And how do you handle the tax side, or if there's any tax things that you deal with in your job today, given your audit background?
So being that I didn't go into tax, I don't actually know how the tax department works in the earlier years. I know when you go into audit, you're looking at financial statements, which, ultimately now I produce and I understand a lot better. When I started off at Ernst & Young and I'm auditing these financial statements that I actually don't really completely understand, I kind of always joke around that everyone should have like a 3 to 6 month, stint as a bookkeeper or before they even go and audit these statements. People don't really understand what accounting is. It scares them. My current boss now, he's like, your job is to deal with everything accounting. I make the deals, I move the company forward, I make the company money, but you're in charge of everything accounting. So I think whether it was tax or audit, it would not have mattered as far as my career was concerned. But I do deal with accountants and I go over the taxes, and I do that aspect of it. So it might have been more helpful if I had gone into tax, but audit was good from a financial reporting perspective, which I do a lot with now. So.
Great, that's super helpful, because a lot of people aren't sure if they want to go into audit or tax, and there's a lot of stuff after that. So
I think kind of follow your heart, whatever the kind of classes you're taking, whichever one speaks to you more, go for it.
So the next question is for Julie. So we all know that when people start in public accounting, you're placed in a specific industry. Does the industry they get placed in matter when you want to go work private, as in, for your case, working in biotech? Is it possible to move, let's say, from investment management and public accounting and then go into working in biotech?
So listen, my philosophy on this is, if you're good at your job, you could do anything, right? I mean, if you're smart and you have a great work ethic, I think you can move industries as what you want. I think it depends on how long you've done it. So my philosophy and theory on this is, if you know that you want to go into financials, you want to go be an investment banker, you want to do research, you want to do finance, you want to do corporate finance, then you should go that route. And any big four today, or any accounting firm, public accounting firm today, as Joel so eloquently said, they're so desperate for people that if you walked in on the first day and said, I want to be in financial services, that's where they're going to put you because they want you to be happy. I think if you think about outside of the US, where people, when they go to college, they go like right to medical school, or they go right to law school. They don't do the liberal arts and the 4-year college like we do in all cases. And if you know what your heart is and you know what you want to do, then that's where you should go. Again, I started my career in real estate. I did Tishman Speyer Realty. I did Vornado. I moved on to World Wrestling Entertainment. I did Madison Square Garden. And it wasn't until later on that I worked for Dana-Farber Cancer and Beth Israel and Genzyme and all that. So I think that there's certainly movement and there's flexibility, but if you go back to the question that you just asked, how long you should stay at a public accounting firm, I hire a lot of people in my finance team. And if someone has less than 2 years at a big 4 accounting firm, that's not I wouldn't look at them as closely as I would work at someone who has 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So I think you should, if you're going to stay in the industry, then not necessarily public accounting, but if you want to work in the accounting function or financial planning analysis, or you want to be a CFO and go that route, please do a minimum of 2 years. And if you're only doing 2 years and it doesn't really matter, cash reconciliation and accounts payable is the same, whether you're in financial services, real estate, or biotech. But as you move up the ladder, you should start to specialize, because you will be competing with people who do have that experience and that specialization.
Great. That makes sense. Let's go to Gilad next. What were some of the necessary steps that you need to take to go into an entirely different field in the world of finance when you transition into credit ratings and leverage finance from public accounting? Did you have to take any of the FINRA exams, I think that's how you pronounce it, or any of the CFA exams?
Sure. So I would say the bigger things when you're trying to transition is number 1, networking. Number 2, networking. Number 3, networking. It's really, especially if you're looking to make a transition. It's when I was attempting to do it, the job market wasn't so great. I think 2 years ago, if I was trying to do the same thing 2 years ago, if I was coming from Deloitte to, trying to move into finance, it would be like much easier because just the job market was fantastic. But unfortunately, right now, it seems like the job market is cooling down materially. So it's super, super important for you to network and to speak to people that are in the seats that you are potentially thinking about going into. And it's kind of like a 2-edged sword, because on the one hand, you want to impress the people that you speak to, and you want to, let's say, the person that works at Goldman and you're speaking to them, and they, the Goldman has an opening that you potentially might be interested in. You want to both get the information of trying to figure out, do I want to do this for a living? But you also kind of want to impress them. There's a little bit of an intricate dance. With that being said, I think it's crucial that you speak to people and you figure out what it is that you are good at, what it is that you want to do. Because I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to YU students who say, oh, I want to work in finance, I want to do investment banking. And then you ask them why? So just tell me why, just in plain English. Don't tell me oh, it's so amazing. It's not amazing. It's a lot of drudgery. And there's a lot of days when you're don't love what I do specifically, but I think it's important to know what it is that you want to do and why you're good at. Do you want to sell? Do you want to trade? Do you want to make buy-sell recommendations? Do you want to do research? Those are very, very different seats. So it's really important to do your homework and to network. And then part of the networking thing, and maybe other people who've heard me speak about networking in other venues know this, networking is more than just getting a job and more than getting a lead into an interview. It's also gives you insight what the company is like and what it is that they're looking for, and that's really, really crucial, especially if you're coming from a non-traditional route, right? All these, I hope I'm not misstating this, but I think a lot of the other people here on this panel, had maybe a little bit more of traditional, so much more traditional career path than I have. And I think today, if you were looking to make that kind of a transition from from an auditor at a Big Four into kind of getting into the controller seat into and then eventually into CFO seat, I think a lot of that would happen through recruiters. And recruiters, as soon as you see somebody with 2, 3, 4 years of public accounting experience, you're going to get flooded with recruiters. I know I did until like a couple years ago. People still wanted to place me in accounting seats, even though I left accounting. So if you're from a more classic kind of trajectory like that, the recruiters basically will come to you. If you're looking to pivot, it's you need to know what you want to do, and you need to be able to have that information going in, and just you really need to do your homework on what it is that the interview process looks like. Like, for example, a lot of interview processes have a case study. Like I had that at S&P, where they gave me a company and they said, "Tell us what you know about what you think about this company. What kind of rating would you give it?" And had I not done my homework, had I not figured out that was going to be what's going to be offered to me, and understand the criteria that S&P uses and how to think about a company, I would have failed, and I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So I think those two things are really important: just networking and to do your homework.
I hear that for sure. And let's go on to Joel next. Given that you worked in public accounting and majored in accounting at YU, how did you know that making the switch to law was the right move for yourself?
Yeah, I didn't know for sure, honestly. I just knew at the time that I did not want to stay in accounting, whether it was public or private. As I mentioned, after I left Coopers & Lybrand, I spent a year. I dabbled in my own like startup business. I was doing some audit work for some small accounting firms that needed my expertise, quite frankly, from having been trained as an auditor at Coopers & Lybrand. And then I took the LSATs, and I'm happy that I did. So until you can't know for sure that you're going to like something until you actually do it. But I did enjoy law school, and I wouldn't be a lawyer for the last 32 years if I didn't enjoy it. Yeah, and you could supplement it with other interests. As I mentioned, I do a lot of work having nothing to do with my law practice with startups and advising and mentoring startups, and you could work with nonprofits, and so you don't define yourself necessarily 100% by your job. It's you got to make a decision. Do you work to live or live to work? But in any event, getting back to the topic of the evening, accounting is just a great background for so many things in the profit sector and the nonprofit sector. Understanding the numbers and how they work. I mean, I even tell people who are going into chinuch and into the nonprofit world that they say, "Oh, what do I need to take any business or accounting classes?" And I tell them all the time. I said, "Well, if you ever want to be an assistant principal in a yeshiva, or a director in some social services organization, a lot of what those people do is budgeting. It's all about the numbers, and having a good understanding of finance and accounting will make you a much better administrator in the nonprofit sector, whether it's a yeshiva, a nonprofit organization, or whatever."
Amazing. And now for the last individual question for Joshua. So a lot of people, they're deciding whether to go into either audit or tax. Many people say, well, if you want to go private and become a CFO, going into audit is the way to go. But for you, as you said before, that your background is mostly in tax, and you worked in tax for a very long time. So how did you successfully make that transition into being a CFO, and without having that auditing background that a lot of other people have?
So I say, okay, good question. I mean, my role as CFO is, I would say, not necessarily the traditional CFO role of a large company where the CFO's responsibility is audited financial statements and accounting. I mean, my role as CFO is, if anything, a tremendous amount of my job now is tax, income tax planning, trust and estate planning, So actually, it's probably more tax driven than accounting. But in college, I really I enjoyed the tax from the first day. I used to volunteer. In those days, there was something tax community tax something where we used to go to poor neighborhoods and actually prepare on paper tax returns with pencil and paper, and sort of like a set up shop H&R Block for low income individuals. And I enjoyed doing that. And then, but I knew I needed my CPA. And if you go into tax, getting your CPA could be more difficult because of the audit work experience. So I'd done a lot of research at the time. There are exceptions where you can actually, if you do tax basis financial statements, that actually counts as audit time. And if you do audit and tax work on the same account, all of the hours you spend in tax also count as audit time. I did a lot of research at the time to make sure that I would qualify, my hours would qualify even in at the time, Ernst & Young's tax department. So my role as CFO is actually very, very tax driven, although there is a lot of accounting as well. Debits and credits go a long way, but a lot of tax as well. And just to comment on something that Joel, that you said, one of my roles also as CFO within the family office is I work very closely with the people that work in the Paul Singer Foundation, which is a very, very large foundation. But I would tell you, everything in the not-for-profit world is budgeting and how they're going to fundraise based on of that budgeting. And a lot of people in the not-for-profit sector know nothing about numbers. And it's like a completely different, completely foreign language to a lot of people. So it is a tremendous, it's obviously even in the for-profit sector, but in the not-for-profit sector, accounting background is a tremendous and valuable skill. So I think that's a very good point that you made as well.
I hear that, and I wish that I would have brought some of my friends on there, considering going to chinuch onto this Zoom tonight to be able to hear the gems that both of you guys just said. And now I really appreciate all of our panelists for speaking with us tonight. And now we're gonna hop into our breakout rooms.